make no mistake, there was not a time we were out there on surveillance where we didn't have the forethought that these were going to be recovered in crimes. The next time we became aware of these guns would be when they were recovered at their final crime.
There we have John Dodson, one of a handful of very well-known ATF whistleblowers in the Fast and Furious case. And there's been some movement, even though Congress right now is in recess, there's been some movement on Fast and Furious because, one, we've had the settlement of a retaliation case against one of those whistleblowers. Peter Forcelli, he's an ATF agent, he's former NYPD. He, like Dodson, testified in front of the House Oversight Committee on Fast and Furious, on the scandal back in June of 2011. And like Dodson, he was transferred to an ATF supervisor who is quoted as saying that he wanted to take them down. Now, again, Dodson and Forcelli were out of the ATF's Phoenix office. They were sort of right at the heart of where all of that Fast and Furious stuff was happening. And apparently the settlement that he's received from the Department of Justice as a result of this retaliation, he can't disclose what it is, but in the media they're saying, or his lawyers are saying to the media, that he is smiling and it is a 180-degree reversal by management, which I would think means that they had clear evidence of retaliation here. So you have that. On the other hand, you also have the Department of Justice now, in the meantime, putting together an ombudsman position for whistleblowers within DOJ. We could put up with the quote as to what the whistleblowers are supposed to do, or what the ombudsman, rather, is supposed to do. But they're supposed to play a critical role in uncovering waste, fraud, abuse, and mismanagement. And this new position will enable the OIG, the Office of the Inspector General, to continue its leadership as a strong and independent voice within the Department of Justice on whistleblower issues. So that all sounds well and good. So let's take a look at what it would do. It would ensure that specific duties of this ombudsman's position. It would ensure that the whistleblower complaints are reviewed and addressed by the OIG in a prompt and thorough manner. It would communicate with whistleblowers about the status and resolution by the OIG of those complaints, monitor investigations of retaliation claims that are within the jurisdiction, serve as the OIG liaison to other agencies with whistleblower responsibilities, and to non-government whistleblower organizations and advocacy groups. A lot of bureaucratic speak. I know right now we're like, what? What is all this? Well, the point of this all is that they are putting together now, within the bureaucracy, a mini-bureaucracy that's supposed to prevent these whistleblowers from being retaliated against, which is what happened in the Fast and Furious case. They brought forward that these tactics are being used, that now everyone has disavowed as being incredibly stupid. In fact, I believe Forcelli called them delusional, which is perhaps the best explanation of the Fast and Furious gun-running tactic that I've heard yet. It was delusional. And so now we have the DOJ saying that they're going to police their own here. They're going to make sure that whistleblowers aren't the subject of efforts to take them down or destroy them. But will it work? We know Milton Friedman said, "Hell hath no fury like a bureaucrat scorned." Well, we know somebody who can talk to us about this because he has experience with it. We have Special Agent Vincent Cefalu. He has firsthand knowledge because he's been one of the Fast and Furious whistleblowers and currently has a retaliation lawsuit pending against the ATF. Mr. Cefalu, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you guys so much for covering this story continually.
So, right off the bat, would you just share with our viewers a little bit of your past here as a whistleblower and what you dealt with when you brought forth problems within the ATF?
Well, my past is a matter of record at this point. Short version, I was exposed to ethical lapses, potential criminal misconduct by leadership, by members of my leadership, clearly violation of our ethical standards in pursuing criminal investigations. When I suggested that we should not do that, of course, I'm paraphrasing 5.5 years of my life now. I was told to shut up or get out. I didn't. The rest is history. After a couple termination attempts and denials all along the way, everyone that participated in the retaliations against me and the others are now facing prosecution, termination, scrutiny. We've had our first cabinet member in the history of the United States held in contempt. And finally, it would appear that this agency and this department that, of course, never retaliated against whistleblowers is now setting up another protocol to help whistleblowers.
Vince, I want to ask you specifically about that. What is your sense as to whether that would actually work, or do you think that they would need to set up a sort of an outside agency, something not directly under the purview of the people who could be involved in a whistleblower complaint within the Department of Justice? Is there any chance for this ombudsman to do real good over the long term? Is it possible DOJ can wash its own laundry, as they say? What do you think?
Look, it has not proven within the skill set, within the department or the agency to police itself. We've got an institutional background of, draconian, self-serving leadership that's got to be broken. And as of yet, we have not held one person accountable for any of the documented abuses thus far. And now you're going to ask people to turn within our own department and our own agency to expose corruption. And we're going to tell the people. We've been doing that. We have those mechanisms in place already. Why create yet another one? The Office of Special Counsel has all the authority it needs to conduct these investigations. Why would you go to the Department of Justice to report high-level officials within the Department of Justice? It creates some consternation on the field's very uncomfortable with it. Let me put it that way, the people I talk to.
Well, Vince, it also fails the common sense test. This is Will Kane. But let's do this. In order to fully analyze whether or not this ombudsman position would be able to work, can we return to your story and just give me how the story played out? You see what you see as possible misconduct or ethical lapses, and you go to who? Who do you tell? Where is the whistle you blow? And then please also tell me what retaliation means. How were you retaliated against specifically?
Well, understand now, as well documented in the recent government release survey and in the congressional record, it's not just me. There are dozens and dozens of cases.
But give us yours so we can see how it plays out.
The way it broke down in mine, and it's very similar, and that's how Clean Up ATF org got started and how people decided to come forward. I initially turned inside to try to handle our business professionally behind closed doors. When there was no redress, there was a zero compromise, zero discussion, you do it our way or the highway. I was actually specifically told, you will wake up tomorrow and you'll be working in Fargo, North Dakota. Nothing against Fargo, North Dakota, but I'm not from there.
So they said to you, we don't like what we're hearing from you. You need to stop talking about this or be shipped to Fargo.
That's correct.
Okay.
And it was more specific, and there were very specific representations. We will give you the crappiest job in the Bureau in Fargo. We will do this and this and this. At that point, the line got drawn in the sand. It was a big enough issue. There were questions of illegal wiretaps, subverting our criminal investigative procedures and the law, and I refused to do that. It escalated, and I was told specifically by my supervisor, first line, second line, third line, this isn't going to stop until the Vince show stops. So what followed then was I was referred for a psychological evaluation. I was transferred 5 times in 16 months. I received 2 or 3 suspensions, 3 or 4 reprimands. I was terminated twice, or attempts to terminate me twice. All the while, my family, my friends, my reputation, my evaluations suffered solely to prevent their misconduct from being exposed. As it went up the chain, as I then became convinced that we would have to go to outside channels, we collectively, the agents who were communicating that this was going on at the highest levels, it got worse and it became more pronounced, and it was clear that the highest levels would prefer to protect their own and serve their own agendas than serve the Bureau's mission. That's a short version.
So, Andrew, it sounds like retaliation with Fast and Furious in particular and at ATF and the Department of Justice is real. And this quote today from the statement of the Office of Special Counsel from Carolyn Lerner, the head of the Office of Special Counsel, she said, quote, I commend Mr. Forcelli, Peter Forcelli, who had the settlement, for his courage in coming forward. And I applaud both him and ATF for their good faith efforts to reach resolution of these issues. Andrew, this sounded to me like negotiated language, that clearly that the Office of Special Counsel had realized that they were in such deep, to use a technical term, doo-doo, that they had to make a public statement and saying that they applaud the whistleblowers' courage. I mean, how did you read that?
I guess the more we see this retaliation, you don't retaliate against somebody if you're a politician unless you're guilty of what it is they're whistleblowing on. So if we're looking at people who are coming forward and saying this operation was criminal, and I can tell you why, after the president exercised executive privilege, now we're seeing the retaliation. You're telling me, you're telegraphing body language that says you're guilty.
Well, I wanted to actually ask Vince if I could.
I mean the seniors and the
right.
Yeah, I don't mean
of course
our guest.
Vince, right now on the Blaze, there's actually a story from what's apparently a senior member of the Sinaloa cartel. He's being held outside of Chicago, and he's claiming that there was much more to Operation Fast and Furious than has yet been released. He's making a lot of accusations. They haven't yet been proven, but he is saying these things, and they are out there in the media. Is it your contention that there's more to Operation Fast and Furious than is even known at this point, given the congressional record, given the investigation that's going on and beyond, and that it would upset people if they knew? I mean, I know there are limitations on what you can say.
Oh, clearly, without speaking to the facts of that story or the circumstances regarding it, I think any time that the Department of Justice withholds information from the U.S. Congress and we cannot discuss or provide the factual information on anything we do and provide an explanation and a justification in the American people, there's probably something terribly wrong within our department and our agency at that point.
And do you think that the ATF, given what's happened recently, do you think it's salvageable, or do you think that it's something that actually could end up being folded into another organization and sort of ceasing to exist as it stands now?
Well, that's our fear. That's the reason many of us have subjected ourselves to the, lack of a better word, torture we have, because this is probably the finest single law enforcement agency in the history of law enforcement. And I don't think the baby should be thrown out with the bathwater. But until they start holding somebody accountable, it's a very real possibility that the resources and the protections and the efforts put forward by the agents with boots on the ground could go away. It could go away, and it would be a tragedy.
Vince, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you guys for having me.
All right, tonight's top 3 stories are next.